Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your source material, all the articles, research notes, personal reflections, and, well, really cut to the core of what matters.
Exactly.
And today we are diving deep into a fascinating stack of sources, all focused on the intentionality of our lives. Specifically, the immense power that's generated when your words, your perceptions, and your actions are all in perfect agreement.
That's right. I think our mission here for this deep dive is to find a genuine shortcut to focusing your inner story.
A shortcut. I like that.
And we're not just talking about, wishful thinking. We're looking at the tremendous, almost physical power that's inherent in agreeing upon a specific outcome.
So whether that agreement comes through conscious language or faith or just a deliberate choice.
A moment-to-moment choice, yeah. To shift your perception away from that default negativity, the results are they're so powerful.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately. Let's start with language itself.
Good place to start.
The sources point out we have this chance to use what we might call catchphrases, but not as filler, right? It's a purposeful choice.
It's about deliberately programming your communication. Instead of letting some negative habit dictate how you respond, you choose a phrase like, everything is good as gold.
Good as gold.
Exactly. And the source notes that this practice, having these positive declarative phrases ready to go, was actually a habit of the saints of old.
That's fascinating. So it's an ancient strategy.
An ancient strategy of proactive self-governance, yeah.
Yeah.
But we've largely lost it to social automation. I mean, think about the standard hallway exchange.
Oh, yeah. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. And most of the time, that good is completely meaningless, isn't it?
It's reflexive noise. It's a transaction. You're not actually asking a question. You're just making an acknowledgement out of, habit and obligation.
Right, and you're not even making eye contact half the time.
Precisely. Most people who ask, how are you, are on autopilot. They don't actually want an honest answer because, they're not prepared for the emotional exchange it might require.
He's saying, hi, keep moving.
Keep moving, exactly. But when the question is genuine, the whole dynamic just shifts. There was this really compelling observation in the source material. It was after a recent bereavement.
Okay.
And when a friend was genuinely asked how she was doing, her response wasn't good. It was, I'm getting better.
Wow. That is a massive difference.
Huge.
It shifts the energy from just status quo to acknowledging the present but declaring forward movement.
It does. And what followed that honesty wasn't just a quick head nod. It was a long hug.
See, that's the essence of intentional language.
It is. It moves the conversation away from superficial chatter about, the weather.
Which the source calls juvenile.
Right, bluntly. And it moves it into something meaningful. It requires sincerity. And that sincerity, it's almost a spiritual connection.
How so?
Well, the source shares this powerful cultural example. The greeting used by a group of men, maybe in Bangladesh or northern India, and their greeting basically translates to, I acknowledge the God in you.
Oh.
It's a recognition of the inherent worth and potential in the other person. You're not just dismissing them, you're truly engaging.
So the insight is that sincerity draws us closer to others, but also to our own purpose.
And that translates directly into action. It means refusing to play those passive-aggressive games. Like, well, you don't call me, so I'm not going to call you. That's the external noise we have to learn to shut down.
And overcoming that game transitions us perfectly into our next section, which is all about building and protecting our own narrative against that very noise.
It's all a choice. And it's a hard choice because that noise often comes from other people's deeply ingrained, sometimes toxic stories.
The old adage about the two wolves inside of us.
Exactly. The one dark, one light. And the one that wins is the one you feed. It sounds simple, but it's a concrete reminder that you have to consciously decide to put your mind in a certain place.
And you see this in, say, family conflicts. You might be focused on, well, she started it.
Right.
But the narrative you need to adopt is, there was no starting. You choose whether or not to pick up that rope. You don't have to let other people hijack your emotional state.
The challenge today, though, is just the sheer overload. I mean, we live in a time of unprecedented information. For any goal running a business, losing 10 pounds, there are, as the source says, 8,000 ways to do it.
We're drowning in options.
We are, and it constantly threatens our focus, which means the definition of success has to change.
So what does it become?
It's less about having the best idea and more about having the sheer tenacity to stick it out long enough to prove it.
And here's the really crucial part.
Yeah.
That journey is sometimes walked alone.
Yes. Even when you have people beside you, the source is very clear on this. Everybody that's on your journey doesn't see your journey. They're just there.
That's a tough pill to swallow. How do you manage that?
You manage your expectations. You have to recognize that your vision is yours alone. That's why that catchphrase is so essential. You can't do everything all the time with everybody.
Internalizing that just releases so much pressure to get everyone on board.
It does. And this is where the source brings up the idea of opulence as an independent sport.
We should probably unpack that term.
Absolutely. When the source says opulence, it's not about material wealth, though that might be a result. It's about an abundance of internal self-sufficiency, fulfillment.
And why is it an independent sport?
Because we're playing the game of perception, not reality. Even your spouse, your closest family, they won't see the daily struggle or the small victories exactly the way you do, and that has to be okay.
We get so caught up expecting that if our decision is right, everyone should just cheer us on.
And if they don't, we get swayed. We have to guard our own minds. Because if you actually claim to find success or truth, some people may even turn on you. Because your success might feel like a comment on their own lack of progress. You just have to control your own story regardless.
Controlling the story. That brings us to perseverance and how purpose can come from hardship. The source brings up the Apostle Paul.
A perfect example.
So much of his most enduring work, the letters that shaped theology, came from him sitting in a Roman prison cell.
It powerfully illustrates that a worthwhile life doesn't need to be easy. In fact, the source argues that hardship is built in. Paul wasn't pretending it was comfortable. He just affirmed that his life had an internal purpose.
When you accept that hardship is inevitable, you stop thinking it should be different.
The destructive power of the shoulds, yes.
That constant internal narrative telling you reality is wrong.
That's the friction. That's why we feel stuck. We spend all our energy resisting the present. The sources have a very blunt quote from Reverend Ike.
Yeah.
The gist of it is, if you keep demanding things should be different, you're fighting reality and just setting yourself up for emotional turmoil.
It's a friction that drains our ability to act. And the science cited in the material back this up.
It does. Studies show that 40% of our daily thoughts go toward things not working out. We're prehashing failures. And even more jarring, 90% of our daily conversations with ourselves are repetitive.
So if you're stuck in a negative loop,
No wonder you feel paralyzed.
so how do we break it? How do we change the script when a habit feels like fighting gravity?
You don't have to change everything at once. The advice is to change the habit just one time. A single pattern interruption.
But you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. Your body has a memory for efficiency. If you're used to doing something one way, the new action giving an honest answer instead of good, for example, is going to feel super awkward.
And that awkwardness can be paralyzing. This is where understanding the novelty factor comes in.
The mechanism is evolutionary. Your mind equates newness with danger. Historically, new things, a new predator, a strange plant could be a threat. It's a protective mechanism.
So when you introduce something new, your brain just shouts, danger.
Exactly. But when you recognize that feeling isn't because the action is truly risky, but just because it's new, you gain immediate power. You reframe that awkwardness, not as fear, but as a sign of necessary growth.
That reframing is everything, because you have to keep going even when it's awkward. The cost of quitting is just too high. The sources use that classic story of the miner who gave up 3 feet from gold.
Such a powerful anecdote. They invested everything, hit a snag, panicked, and sold all their equipment for pennies.
And the next owner drilled just 3 feet further.
And found a massive gold vein, but that's not even the real lesson.
What's the real lesson?
The reframing that happened next. The original miners, they didn't just stay defeated, they heard the story, and instead of wallowing in the shoulds, they asked the ultimate question.
How can we capitalize here?
Precisely. They realized the real asset wasn't the gold they missed, but the knowledge of the process. They pivoted. They started an equipment rental business, leasing tools to the new miners, and they became millionaires.
They took knowledge from failure and redirected it. So that question, how can I capitalize here?
Yeah.
It pulls you out of regret.
And it focuses you on the present asset, which leads us to the deepest part of this, self-reflection and the power of forgiveness.
Right. We're reminded that words are invitations. We often get exactly what we ask for, just not in the way we expect. There's a funny but cautionary anecdote in the source about praying over the difficulty of having newborns, diapers and toddlers.
And the response was teenagers.
Teenagers, already potty trained, but with a whole slew of problems. They were far more complex than a diaper change.
It just shows the power of our spoken agreement and why we have to examine the negative patterns we keep inviting.
Like the child who keeps eating someone else's pizza.
Yes, it's not about the pizza. The repetition points to something deeper. A lack of respect, being starved for attention, something.
The self-sabotage is always a symptom, never the cause.
It requires asking that deeper question. Why do I keep doing this thing I know damages me? And that brings us to the key introspective question from the source material.
If you don't examine yourself, then what can you expect other than random decisions that lead to a life that you don't recognize?
That's the one. And we hear so often, oh, I'm just like my mother, or I inherited this trauma, as if it's unchangeable.
Like it's a law of nature.
We inherit patterns, yes, but we choose whether or to keep them. The sources are blunt. The reason you stay stuck in a negative pattern is your active choice. At any given time, we are what we choose to accept.
And what we refuse to let go of.
Exactly.
So sometimes when you're stuck, the issue isn't even a current choice. It's an old wound.
Yeah.
This is where forgiveness comes in. Instead of asking what's bothering you, the source says to ask.
Who's bothering you?
Right. And that redirects you to the people who caused the first time you felt diminished, even if that memory is from when you were 4 or 5 years old.
And you perform that deliberate act of forgiving them. But also, and this is crucial, forgiving yourself. Because at that age, you didn't have the tools to handle it differently. It's an act of emotional debt cancellation. It clears the way.
And clearing that slate brings us to the ultimate expression of control, the foundational promise of this whole dive.
That promise is, if your thoughts, your words, and your actions are in complete agreement, if you are intentional at every level, you can create whatever you want.
It sounds almost too easy.
But the source suggests the divine intentionally made it straightforward. Complexity is often just a human invention to disguise fear. Intentionality is the alignment tool.
That's the definitive takeaway. So let's wrap this with actionable steps. First, choose your words purposefully. Second, accept personal responsibility for your narrative. And third, decide what you will accept and what you will refuse to let go of.
To put that in a practical metaphor, pruning. Find what's not working and get rid of it so that the rest can thrive.
You're not cutting away core parts of yourself.
No, just pruning dead branches. It's not a painful amputation. It's a deliberate act of clarity that lets energy flow to what's productive.
I love the final provocative thought that came from the material. It brings this full circle, talking about the plant that was thought to be dead.
But was only dormant. It just needed pruning and feeding. It wasn't dead. It was in a dormant resting period.
That's the ultimate reframe.
It is. For anyone who's struggling, you think you're buried, but you're really planted. If you trust the process and speak your reality into existence with faith and consistency, the breakthrough is inevitable.
A powerful place to end.
So we officially invite awesome into your day. We call forth peace. Because anything else, stress, worry, doubt, it's just too expensive to sustain.
It is not in the budget. Thank you for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.